Leslie Teague, and this is Ask CRA. I'm joined by Vance Piggott, who is with Chronic Law Firm in Sacramento and a valued CRA Legal Center partner. And today we're talking about immigration. So let's get right to it. Vance, I've heard that there are operators out there very concerned that there are some federal law changes on immigration. Can you kind of walk us through if that's true or not?
Yeah, of course. So obviously everybody's hearing a lot about the increased focus on immigration law. But really the changes, and you hear a lot about executive orders, those all really relate to asylum seekers and refugees coming into the country and what that process looks like and the process for deportation. None of the new laws and none of those new executive orders really change what employers are obligated to do with respect to employees and verifying that employees are eligible to work in the country. That stuff is all still the same.
Thank you. And what should operators know in the event that ICE shows up at their restaurant?
Right. So like anything, success depends on preparation. We are really suggesting that employers that are concerned about ICE audits take a step back and before that audit actually occurs, develop a plan. Doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be a lot, but at minimum, I suggest a couple things. One, you want to designate a point person. Who is going to be the person talking to the representatives from ICE? You want to have one line of communication to them and one line of communication back to the restaurant to avoid any type of confusion. So that's part one. Part two is that person should be educated on really a lot of the stuff that we're going to cover today. What the obligations are, what are the rights of an employer. So before that audit, hopefully you have some plan in place so that you're ready and know what to expect. And then really a couple steps when that ICE audit does occur. One is you want to verify that these people are actually from ICE. They should have a badge. They should have some type of identification. And there is definitely some concern about impersonators coming around and wreaking a little bit of havoc. So definitely make sure that these people are actually who they say they are. Request some form of a badge or other identification. Then second, now, and this gets into really kind of ICE's authority to be present in an area. Employers that are open to the public, if an ICE agent can just walk in the front door like any other patron or any other individual, they're allowed to do that. And they can ask questions. They don't need a warrant or anything like that, but you're not obligated to comply. You can give them a trespass notice. You can ask them to leave. But if ICE does show up with a warrant, and they should be able to provide you a copy of a warrant, then they have the authority to really do whatever it says in that warrant. So the warrant should identify where they can go, who they're looking for, what they can have access to. And employers really should be holding those agents closely to what's in that warrant. They will be seeking consent almost certainly to go outside the scope of that warrant. And if you provide consent, they are well within their rights to do so. So do not give that consent. We really recommend that when you get that warrant, get a copy of that warrant, look at it, figure out what the scope of the warrant is, what they are authorized to do there under that warrant, and hold them really closely to that. And if they're asking, hey, can we go into this other location? Can we check this out? The answer to that really should be no, and it should be a clear no. The last thing that I'll point out too is document to the extent that you can everything that happens. Whether you take a recording, whether you have somebody taking notes, or either pull out a cell phone, take a video, really document everything that is being done. Because again, if they're going outside that warrant, that is unlawful. And if they uncover any information during that unlawful portion of the search, there might be some remedies on the part of an employer to respond to those.
And in speaking about documentation, I would imagine if ICE shows up and they want information from you as the operator about your employees, what are you obligated to share and how much time do you have to do so? Do you have to just hand it over at that very moment, or is there a certain amount of time that you have to comply?
So that can come about in a couple ways. And it's not just ICE, but a few other federal government branches can request through a notice of inspection, which is an actual written document. And generally that's mailed or delivered in some other way. You will not generally be confronted by an agent serving you this. But that notice of inspection will request to review the documents that you have related to your I-9s. So if you get a notice of inspection, it will have in there a timeline for you to comply. And if you can't comply within that timeline for some reason, you can ask for additional time. If it does occur during an ICE raid or an ICE audit, then again, it's really just whatever's in that warrant. If there is specifically in the warrant that they're entitled to review documents, I-9 documents and supporting documents for I-9s, you are obligated to provide those. But I do think that that's more likely to occur in one of these notices that you receive that gives you a timeline to respond. I think it's probably less likely that ICE will come around as part of a raid looking for documents. But again, whatever is in that warrant, those are things that you should absolutely comply with. If it's not identified in that warrant, you have no obligation to comply.
Trying to get ahead of things, is there any information or notifications that operators should be sharing with their employees?
If there is a concern you have, for whatever reason you have a concern for an audit, the biggest thing is, well, and let me start here. One, if ICE does show up, and I should have covered this earlier, if ICE does show up and wants to speak with your employees, you as an employer should really take a neutral position. You should not tell your employees, hey, you need to speak with them, or hey, you should not speak with them. At most, you should tell your employees, it's up to you whether or not you want to speak with the ICE agents. So that would be item number one. And then if you do have employees, I have heard, for example, employees calling in sick because they're stressed about potential ICE audits or ICE raids. Really difficult to expect. I don't think that these are occurring all that often. And so, you can't expect them to occur. If employees are worried about it, have a conversation with them. And if you do have that plan in place, like we talked about a little bit earlier, share the employees what that plan is. Hey, if ICE comes around, you don't have an obligation to speak with them. We have this person who's designated as a point of contact. We're going to ensure that we follow the federal law and that we still maintain your rights as an employee. And actually, in part two of this podcast, we'll be talking about some of those rights that employees have under the California Labor Code as opposed to under federal law.
Okay, great tips, Vance. Thank you so much. We also have lots of different resources on calrest.org. I would encourage our members to spend some time on our website, look at past webinars, industry white papers. We've got lots of great information. So thank you again.
Thanks.